If you're watching this video, you've probably already tried the Pomodoro technique, time blocking, and maybe even that whole eat the frog thing. But here's what nobody tells you about procrastination in 2025. It's not actually about time management. New studies show motivation alone won't beat procrastination, because research shows most chronic procrastinators struggle with dopamine regulation in their brains. I'm about to show you exactly what that pattern is and the 3-step method that finally breaks it. This isn't another productivity hack. This is about rewiring how your brain actually works. But first, you need to understand that there are two completely different types of people when it comes to getting things done. The two types of people in 2025. Meet Sarah. She's got 17 different productivity apps on her phone. She's watched every single YouTube video about morning routines, and she's tried bullet journaling 3 separate times. But here's the thing about Sarah. She still can't finish anything. Like literally anything. She started writing a blog in January, got halfway through her first post, and then spent the next 2 hours scrolling TikTok instead. She bought a gym membership in February, went twice, and now she just feels guilty every time she drives past the building. Sarah has a folder on her desktop called Projects, with 47 different half-finished documents in it. 47. And every single one of them represents another moment where she got excited about something, started it, and then just stopped. Sarah's daily routine looks like this. She wakes up, checks her phone for 20 minutes, makes coffee while watching YouTube videos about how to be more productive, sits down at her computer with the best intentions, opens her work, stares at it for exactly 3 minutes, and then somehow ends up on Instagram looking at vacation photos from people she went to high school with. By noon, she's frustrated with herself. By 3 p.m., she's making lists of everything she's going to accomplish tomorrow. By 8 p.m., she's watching Netflix and promising herself she'll start fresh on Monday. Sound familiar? Now let me tell you about Emma. Emma wakes up at 6 a.m. every single day, not because she set 17 alarms like Sarah does, but because she just naturally wakes up at 6 a.m. She makes her coffee, sits down at her desk, and starts working. No phone checking, no YouTube videos, no motivational music playlist. She just starts. When Emma decides to write a blog post, she writes it. When she decides to go to the gym, she goes. When she sets a goal, she hits it. And here's the crazy part. Emma doesn't feel like she's constantly fighting herself. She doesn't need motivation speeches or accountability partners or productivity apps. She just does things. You might think Emma has better willpower than Sarah, or maybe she's just naturally more disciplined. Maybe you think Emma grew up in a household where her parents taught her better habits, or she's just one of those people who's good at time management. But that's not what's happening here. The difference between Sarah and Emma isn't about willpower or discipline or even time management skills. It's about something much deeper. It's about how their brains are literally wired to process rewards and handle discomfort. Sarah represents a growing number of young adults who struggle with chronic procrastination. Research shows that procrastination rates have increased significantly over recent years, with more people reporting difficulty completing tasks than ever before. And here's what's really concerning about this trend. It's getting worse every year. This isn't just about people being lazy or having poor time management skills. This is about an entire generation whose brains have been rewired to function in a way that makes traditional productivity advice completely useless. The key to understanding everything that follows in this video is recognizing that Sarah and Emma don't just have different habits, they have different brain chemistry. When Sarah tries to work on something important, her brain literally fights against her. When Emma sits down to work, her brain supports her. This isn't a metaphor or some feel-good psychology. This is actual measurable brain activity that shows up on neuroimaging scans. Sarah's brain releases stress hormones when she tries to focus on difficult tasks. Emma's brain releases dopamine when she completes them. But here's what nobody talks about. What exactly makes them naturally consistent while others constantly struggle? Why does Emma's brain work with her while Sarah's brain works against her? The answer has nothing to do with genetics or personality traits or childhood experiences. It has everything to do with how their brains have been conditioned to respond to different types of stimulation over the past 10 years. Traditional productivity advice fails because it assumes everyone's brain works the same way. It assumes that if you just give someone the right system or the right motivation, they'll be able to follow through. But Sarah's brain has been conditioned to crave instant gratification. Emma's brain has been conditioned to find satisfaction in long-term progress. You can't fix a brain chemistry problem with a time management solution. This pattern gets worse with age if you don't address it. Sarah is 24 now, and her procrastination is worse than it was when she was 20. By the time she's 30, if nothing changes, she'll be one of those people who talks about all the things she's going to do someday, but never actually does any of them. Her brain will become so dependent on instant gratification that the idea of working on something for more than 10 minutes will feel physically painful. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. You can identify which type you are right now. You don't have to wait until you're 30 to figure out if you're a Sarah or an Emma. There's a simple self-assessment that reveals your procrastination type based on how your brain responds to different scenarios. Think about the last time you sat down to work on something important. Not busy work, not answering emails, but something that actually mattered to you. Maybe it was a creative project, maybe it was studying for an exam, maybe it was working on a business idea. When you sat down to work on it, what happened in your brain? Did you feel excited and energized, or did you feel resistance and the urge to do something else? Did you naturally settle into focus, or did you immediately start thinking about all the other things you could be doing instead? If you felt resistance, if your brain started suggesting other activities, if you found yourself checking your phone, or getting up to get a snack, or suddenly remembering that you needed to clean your room, you're a Sarah. If you felt energized, if you naturally settled into focus, if time seemed to pass quickly while you were working, you're an Emma. The difference between these two responses isn't about discipline or willpower. It's about dopamine sensitivity, attention span conditioning, and something called neural pathway efficiency. Sarah's brain has been trained to associate difficult tasks with discomfort. Emma's brain has been trained to associate them with reward. And here's the most important part. This training is completely reversible. You can literally rewire your brain to respond like Emma's does. But you have to understand the science behind why it works the way it does first. And that science starts with understanding what's actually happening to your brain every single day. Because if you're a Sarah, there's something you're doing right now that's making your procrastination worse without you even realizing it. The dopamine trap that's destroying your generation. That something is a dopamine trap that's rewiring your brain in ways that make focus almost impossible. People aged 18 to 34 are now spending an average of 9.7 hours per day looking at screens. That's not including sleep. That's literally more time than most people spend at their jobs. But here's the part that should actually scare you. Neuroscientists have found that this group shows changes in dopamine processing that mirror what happens with addictive behaviors. Your brain literally can't feel good about normal things anymore because it's been hijacked by algorithms designed to keep you scrolling. Maya figured this out the hard way when she was 24 years old. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a startup, and she kept getting in trouble for missing deadlines. Not because she didn't know how to do her job, but because she couldn't focus on anything for more than 15 minutes without checking her phone. She would sit down to write a report, get 2 sentences in, and then somehow end up watching TikToks about dogs wearing costumes. One day, her boss pulled her aside and said if she missed another deadline, she was getting fired. That night, Maya decided to track exactly how many times she picked up her phone. The number was 247 times in one day. 247 times. Maya started paying attention to what happened in her brain right before she reached for her phone. She noticed this weird feeling, like a little itch in her mind that said she needed to check something. It wasn't even that she wanted to check her phone. It was that her brain was telling her she had to. Like when you're really thirsty, and your body is demanding water, except instead of water, her brain was demanding digital stimulation. She realized her phone had literally trained her brain to crave instant gratification every few minutes. The social media algorithms in 2025 are specifically designed to create this exact response. They're not just trying to keep you on the platform, they're trying to make you incapable of focusing on anything else. The algorithm learns exactly what type of content makes your brain release dopamine. Then it feeds you just enough to keep you wanting more, but never enough to actually satisfy you. It's like being perpetually hungry but never being allowed to eat a full meal. Here's what's happening in your brain when you scroll through social media. Every time you see something that's mildly interesting, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. But here's the thing about dopamine. Your brain builds tolerance to it just like it does to any other drug. So the first time you see a funny meme, your brain releases, let's say, 10 units of dopamine. The second time you see something funny, it only releases 8 units. The third time, 6 units. Your brain needs more and more and more stimulation to feel the same level of satisfaction. This creates a situation where normal activities start feeling incredibly boring. Reading a book, having a conversation, working on a project, these things don't provide the constant stream of micro rewards that your brain has become addicted to. Your brain has been trained to expect a dopamine hit every 30 seconds. So when you try to focus on something that might take 30 minutes to provide any reward, it feels like torture. Maya realized this was why she couldn't focus on work. Her brain had been conditioned to expect constant stimulation, so sitting down to write a report felt like trying to run a marathon after training for sprints. Her attention span had been chopped up into tiny fragments, and trying to put those fragments back together into sustained focus felt impossible. The research shows that digital habits have increased dopamine dependency in recent years, according to neuroscience review studies. Your dopamine receptors become less sensitive, which means you need even more stimulation to feel motivated. People who have been heavy social media users for years need significantly more stimulation to feel engaged than people who use it less frequently. It's like your brain's reward system is slowly dying. This is why traditional productivity advice feels so hard to follow consistently. When someone tells you to just focus or eliminate distractions, they're asking you to fight against years of neurological conditioning. Your brain has been rewired to seek constant stimulation, and now you're trying to force it to be satisfied with slow, steady progress. It's like asking someone who's been living on candy to suddenly enjoy plain vegetables. Technically possible, but it requires understanding what's happening at a biological level. Maya's personal satisfaction plummeted because she couldn't enjoy simple pleasures anymore. She would go to dinner with friends, but instead of enjoying the food and conversation, she was thinking about what she should post on social media. She would watch movies, but she couldn't follow the plot because her brain was craving the faster pace of social media content. Everything felt boring compared to the artificial stimulation she had become addicted to. But here's the important part. Maya discovered that this damage is completely reversible. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, which means it can literally rewire itself when you change your behavior patterns. The dopamine receptors that have been overstimulated by constant digital use can heal and become sensitive again. Your attention span can be rebuilt. Your ability to find satisfaction in slow, meaningful activities can be restored. The key is understanding that you're not trying to develop willpower, you're trying to heal your brain's reward system. Maya started with what she called a dopamine reset. For 7 days, she eliminated all sources of instant gratification. No social media, no YouTube, no video games, no news websites. She even avoided music because she realized that constantly switching between songs was training her brain to expect constant novelty. The first 2 days were brutal. Maya felt restless, anxious, and bored. But by day 3, something interesting started happening. She began to notice things she hadn't paid attention to in years. The way sunlight looked coming through her window, the taste of her coffee, the feeling of actually finishing a task without getting distracted. By day 7, she sat down to write a work report and focused on it for 2 hours straight without even thinking about her phone. The dopamine reset works because it forces your brain to become sensitive to smaller rewards again. Instead of needing constant digital stimulation, you start finding satisfaction in completing tasks, having conversations, and making progress on meaningful projects. Your brain remembers how to be satisfied with the natural rewards that come from real accomplishment instead of artificial stimulation. But even after Maya fixed her dopamine sensitivity, she discovered there was still something else fighting against her every time she tried to work on something important. Something deeper than just digital addiction. Something that seemed to activate the moment she sat down to do anything that actually mattered. Why your brain fights against your goals. That resistance comes from what researchers call the brain's tendency to avoid forming new neural pathways. Your brain has evolved to conserve energy and stick with familiar patterns, which means it literally fights against you when you try to change. This isn't some metaphorical concept. This is an actual biological process that activates every time you try to do something challenging. It's the reason you can make perfect plans but never execute them, why you always find excuses at the last minute, and why you feel like you're fighting an invisible force every time you try to improve your life. Jake understood this perfectly because he lived it every single day. Jake was the king of planning. He had color-coded calendars, detailed to-do lists, and elaborate systems for tracking his goals. He could spend hours creating the perfect workout routine, mapping out exactly which exercises he would do on which days, calculating his macros, and researching the best supplements to take. But when it came time to actually go to the gym, Jake would suddenly remember that he needed to reorganize his closet. Or he would decide that he should probably research gym etiquette first, or he would realize that he didn't have the right workout clothes and spend 3 hours online shopping instead. Jake's brain was a master at creating logical-sounding excuses. It never said, "Don't go to the gym because you're scared," or "Don't start that project because you might fail." Instead, it would whisper things like, "You should probably wait until Monday to start so you can have a full week," or "You should do more research first to make sure you're doing it right." This resistance is sneaky because it disguises itself as rational thinking when it's actually just trying to keep you comfortable. The evolutionary reason your brain works this way makes perfect sense when you understand what it was designed for. Your brain evolved over millions of years to keep you alive in dangerous environments where conserving energy and avoiding risks were essential for survival. If you were a caveman and you heard a rustling in the bushes, your brain's job was to make you freeze or run away, not to investigate whether it might be an opportunity. Your brain is wired to perceive anything uncertain or challenging as a potential threat, because that's what kept your ancestors alive. The problem is that this survival mechanism now works against you in modern life. When you think about starting a business, your brain treats it like a saber-toothed tiger. When you consider asking someone out on a date, your brain activates the same threat response it would use if you were being chased by a predator. Your brain can't tell the difference between actual physical danger and the discomfort of doing something challenging, so it responds to both with the same avoidance mechanisms. When you try to do something difficult, brain imaging studies suggest heightened emotional avoidance responses when facing a challenging task. Your brain's alarm system starts firing signals that something dangerous is happening. At the same time, activity in the areas responsible for planning and decision-making decreases. This is why you can make great plans when you're calm and relaxed. But when it's time to execute those plans, your brain suddenly goes blank, and you can't remember why you thought this was a good idea. This is why willpower alone will always fail against these deeper patterns. Willpower operates in the newest and most energy-intensive part of your brain. The resistance operates in much older, more primitive parts of your brain that are always running in the background. It's like trying to win a street fight with a chess strategy. You're using the wrong tool for the job. Your planning brain gets tired after a few hours of making decisions, but your primitive brain never stops trying to keep you safe and comfortable. Here's what makes the resistance even stronger. It gets more powerful the more important the goal is to you. If you're trying to lose 5 pounds, your brain might not see that as a big threat. But if you're trying to completely transform your life, start a business that could change your financial situation, or pursue a relationship that could lead to marriage, your brain interprets these as high-stakes situations and cranks up the resistance accordingly. The fear of failure, the pressure to succeed, and the potential for life-changing consequences all contribute to this heightened resistance. This explains why people often succeed at unimportant tasks, but fail at life-changing ones. Jake could organize his entire music library by genre and year, spend 6 hours researching the best coffee maker, and complete every single side quest in a video game. But when it came to working on his business idea, or going to networking events, his brain would shut down completely. The mundane tasks don't trigger the threat response because there's nothing at stake, so his planning brain can function normally. You're not lazy or weak. You're fighting against millions of years of evolutionary programming. The same brain that kept your ancestors alive is now sabotaging your attempts to build a better life. Understanding this is crucial because it means you can stop beating yourself up and start using strategies that actually work with your brain instead of against it. The neurological override technique works by acknowledging your brain's threat detection system and giving it what it needs to feel safe. Instead of trying to force yourself to do difficult things through willpower, you break down large goals into smaller steps that don't trigger the resistance response. You create positive associations with the behaviors you want to develop instead of relying on discipline and punishment. The technique involves using your brain's natural reward system to your advantage. When you complete a small task, your brain releases dopamine, which creates a positive association with that type of activity. Over time, your brain starts to expect rewards from productive behavior instead of just from procrastination. You're essentially training your resistance to work for you instead of against you. This approach acknowledges that your brain's wiring isn't a character flaw. It's a feature that can be redirected. The same system that creates resistance to challenging tasks can be used to create momentum toward your goals. You just need to understand how to work with your biology instead of fighting against it. But even when you understand the science behind resistance, there's still one more factor that determines whether you'll actually succeed at changing your behavior. It's something that most people completely ignore, and it's the reason why even the smartest, most motivated people fail 89% of people fail over and over again. That factor is timing, and it explains why many studies show most people abandon new habits within a month. Nearly 9 out of 10 people who start a new habit will quit before they even hit the 1-month mark. This failure rate comes from recent behavioral research tracking thousands of participants across different habit formation attempts, and it reveals something disturbing about how most people approach change. The failure rate isn't just high, it's getting worse every year as our attention spans shrink and our environments become more distracting. Lisa discovered this the hard way when she tried 12 different productivity systems in 2024 and failed at every single one. She started the year with the Getting Things Done method, bought the book, downloaded the app, and set up all the folders. She lasted 11 days before she stopped updating her task lists. Then she tried the Pomodoro technique, bought a special timer, and created a detailed schedule. She made it through 2 weeks before she started ignoring the timer completely. Next was time blocking, then the Eisenhower matrix, then bullet journaling, then habit stacking, then atomic habits, then the 2-minute rule. By December, Lisa had spent over $400 on productivity books and apps, but she was less organized than when she started. The hidden factor that determines success or failure has nothing to do with the system itself. It's about something called habit interference, and most people don't even know it exists. When you try to install a new habit, your brain doesn't just evaluate that one habit in isolation. It looks at that new habit in the context of every other habit you already have, and it runs a compatibility check. If your new habit conflicts with your existing patterns, your brain will sabotage the new habit to protect the old ones. Lisa's morning routine was scrolling through social media for 20 minutes right after waking up. When she tried to add meditation to her morning routine, her brain had to choose between the instant gratification of social media and the delayed gratification of meditation. Her existing habit was stronger, more established, and provided immediate reward. The meditation habit required effort and provided benefits that weren't immediately obvious. Her brain chose the path of least resistance and eliminated the meditation habit. Most people are trying to build habits in the wrong order, which is why they fail so consistently. They start with the hardest habits first, instead of building a foundation of easier habits that support the difficult ones. Lisa tried to start exercising 5 times a week before she had established the habit of going to bed at a consistent time. She tried to start eating healthy before she had developed the habit of meal planning. She tried to start meditating before she had learned to sit still for more than 5 minutes without checking her phone. Your current environment is literally programmed to make you fail at habit formation. The average person encounters 35,000 decisions per day, and most of these decisions are happening automatically based on environmental cues. Your environment contains thousands of triggers that activate your old habits, and when you try to install new habits without changing your environment, you're fighting an uphill battle. Lisa kept her phone next to her bed, which triggered her social media habit every morning. She kept junk food in her kitchen, which triggered her unhealthy eating habits. She kept her workout clothes in her closet instead of laying them out, which added friction to her exercise habit. The habit interference effect shows up in neuroimaging studies as competing neural pathways fighting for dominance. When you try to establish a new habit, your brain creates a new neural pathway for that behavior. But your old habits already have well-established neural pathways that are faster and more efficient. Every time you encounter a trigger that could activate either the old habit or the new habit, your brain defaults to the pathway that requires less energy. The new habit pathway is weak and requires conscious effort to activate, while the old habit pathway is strong and activates automatically. Each failure makes the next attempt harder because your brain develops what researchers call learned helplessness around habit formation. When Lisa failed at the getting things done method, her brain recorded that experience as evidence that productivity systems don't work for her. When she failed at the Pomodoro technique, her brain added more evidence to this belief. By the time she tried her 12th system, her brain was already predicting failure before she even started. This created a self-fulfilling prophecy where she unconsciously sabotaged her own efforts because she expected to fail. The popular 21-day habit advice is not just wrong, but actually harmful because it sets unrealistic expectations and creates unnecessary pressure. The 21-day myth came from a misinterpretation of research by plastic surgeon Maxwell Maltz, who noticed that patients took about 21 days to adjust to their new appearance after surgery. This had nothing to do with habit formation, but somehow it became the standard advice for building new habits. Recent research shows that habit formation takes an average of 66 days to become automatic, with a wide range from 18 to 254 days, depending on the complexity of the habit and individual factors. When people believe they should be able to form a habit in 21 days, they interpret normal resistance as failure. They think something is wrong with them when they're still struggling after 3 weeks, so they give up right when they should be pushing through. This creates a cycle where people constantly restart habit formation attempts instead of persisting through the difficult middle phase, where habits actually get established. This pattern affects every area of life because habit formation is the foundation of personal development. People who can't stick to exercise habits struggle with energy and health. People who can't stick to learning habits fall behind in their careers. People who can't stick to relationship habits struggle with intimacy and connection. The inability to form habits creates a cascading effect where every area of life stays stuck at the same level. The habit stacking sequence that has an 84% success rate in 2025 studies works by addressing habit interference directly. Instead of trying to force new habits into your existing routine, you identify the habits you already do consistently and attach new habits to them. The sequence starts with finding anchor habits, behaviors you already do automatically without thinking. These might be brushing your teeth, making coffee, or checking your phone when you wake up. The next step is choosing micro habits that take less than 2 minutes to complete and can be attached to your anchor habits. Instead of trying to meditate for 20 minutes, you start with taking 3 deep breaths after you brush your teeth. Instead of trying to exercise for an hour, you start with doing 10 push-ups after you make your coffee. The micro habits are so small that they don't trigger resistance, but they establish the neural pathways that larger habits can build on. The final step is gradual expansion, where you slowly increase the duration or intensity of your micro habits after they become automatic. This approach works because it leverages your brain's existing patterns instead of fighting against them. The 84% success rate comes from people who followed this exact sequence for at least 90 days, compared to the 11% success rate of people who tried to install full habits immediately. But there's one more factor that makes habit formation even harder in 2025 than it was just 5 years ago. Something that's been quietly destroying our ability to stick with anything long enough for it to become automatic. Something that affects how long you can focus on any single task before your brain starts craving something else. The attention span crisis nobody's talking about. That factor is the attention span crisis that's quietly destroying our ability to focus on anything meaningful. Harvard Health research shows that digital distraction has fundamentally altered how our brains process information, making sustained attention increasingly difficult for most people. This isn't just about being easily distracted. It's about losing the cognitive capacity to engage deeply with tasks that require extended focus. The implications are staggering when you realize that everything meaningful in life requires sustained attention. David found this out when he tried to read a book for the first time in 2 years. David was a college graduate with a degree in engineering, so he wasn't stupid or uneducated. But when he sat down with a book that he was genuinely interested in, something weird happened. He would read a paragraph, get to the end, and realize he hadn't absorbed a single word. His eyes had moved across the page, but his brain had been thinking about something else entirely. He would reread the same paragraph 3 times and still not know what it said. After 10 minutes of this, he would give up and check his phone instead. David's experience shows how fragmented attention creates a procrastination spiral that most people don't even recognize. When you can't focus on something for more than a few minutes, everything feels harder than it actually is. Reading a book feels impossible. Writing a report feels overwhelming. Having a deep conversation feels exhausting. Your brain starts to associate these activities with discomfort and failure, so you avoid them. Instead, you gravitate toward activities that match your shortened attention span. Scrolling social media, watching short videos, playing mobile games. These activities feel easier and more rewarding, which reinforces the cycle. The connection between attention span and ability to delay gratification is direct and measurable. When researchers give people tasks that require sustained focus, they find that people with longer attention spans are significantly better at resisting immediate rewards in favor of long-term goals. People with shorter attention spans consistently choose immediate gratification over delayed gratification, even when the delayed reward is objectively better. This explains why so many people know what they should do but can't actually do it. Their attention span is too short to sustain the focus required for meaningful progress. Multitasking has literally rewired our brains to crave distraction. The average person switches between apps on their phone every 19 seconds when they're using it. Every time you switch from one task to another, your brain has to reorient itself, which creates a small amount of mental fatigue. But here's the problem. Your brain starts to interpret this constant switching as normal. It begins to crave the novelty and stimulation that comes from constantly changing focus. After years of multitasking, your brain becomes uncomfortable with sustained attention because it feels unnatural. David noticed this when he tried to work on a single project for more than 20 minutes. His brain would start suggesting other things he could be doing. Maybe he should check his email. Maybe he should look up that thing he was wondering about earlier. Maybe he should see if anyone had texted him. His brain had been trained to expect constant variety, so focusing on one thing felt like deprivation. The neural pathways responsible for sustained attention had weakened from lack of use, while the pathways responsible for task switching had become hyperactive. Deep work feels almost impossible for most people now because their brains have been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. Deep work requires what researchers call cognitive endurance, the ability to maintain focus on a challenging task for extended periods without getting distracted. But cognitive endurance is like physical endurance. If you don't practice it, you lose it. Most people haven't practiced sustained focus in years because their environment doesn't require it. Everything is designed to be consumed in bite-sized pieces. This affects career prospects in ways that most people don't realize. The ability to think deeply about complex problems is becoming increasingly rare and valuable. While everyone else is developing shorter attention spans, the people who can still focus for hours at a time have a massive competitive advantage. They can learn complex skills, solve difficult problems, and produce high-quality work. Meanwhile, people with fragmented attention are stuck in jobs that require constant task switching and provide immediate feedback, which typically pay less and offer fewer opportunities for advancement. Personal relationships suffer because meaningful connections require sustained attention. Having a deep conversation with someone requires the ability to focus on what they're saying for more than a few minutes without getting distracted. Building intimacy requires sustained emotional presence. David found that he couldn't have serious conversations with his girlfriend because his mind would wander after 30 seconds. She would be telling him about something important, and he would find himself thinking about work or wondering what was happening on social media. This created distance in their relationship because she felt like he wasn't really listening to her. Each new social media platform makes this problem worse because it introduces new sources of distraction and reinforces the brain's tendency to seek instant gratification. TikTok trained people to expect entertainment every 15 seconds. Instagram stories trained people to expect constant updates from their friends. Twitter trained people to expect constant news and opinions. Each platform optimizes for engagement, which means they're designed to capture and fragment your attention. The more platforms you use, the more your brain expects constant novelty and stimulation. But attention span can be rebuilt faster than most people think. Your brain has neuroplasticity, which means it can form new neural pathways and strengthen existing ones when you change your behavior. The neural pathways responsible for sustained attention don't disappear when you stop using them. They just become dormant. When you start practicing sustained focus again, these pathways can be reactivated and strengthened relatively quickly. The Attention Restoration Protocol rebuilds focus in 14 days by gradually increasing the duration of focused attention sessions. Day 1 starts with 5 minutes of sustained focus on a single task without any distractions. Day 2 increases to 7 minutes. Day 3 increases to 10 minutes. By day 14, you're able to focus for 60 minutes without getting distracted. Protocol works because it respects your brain's current limitations while systematically expanding them. The key is eliminating all sources of distraction during these focus sessions. No phone, no internet, no music, no notifications. Just you and one task. Your brain will resist this at first because it's been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. But after a few days, you'll notice that sustained focus starts feeling natural again. By the end of 2 weeks, you'll be able to read books, have deep conversations, and work on complex projects without feeling restless or distracted. But even after David rebuilt his attention span, he discovered something else was still holding him back from taking action on his goals. Something that looked like procrastination on the surface, but was actually hiding a much deeper psychological pattern that kept him stuck in endless preparation instead of actual progress. The perfectionism paralysis epidemic. This pattern reveals itself as a fear of imperfection that blocks people from forming new habits entirely. People think they're just being lazy or unmotivated, but what's really happening is they're so afraid of doing something imperfectly that they never start at all. This isn't the obvious perfectionism, where someone rewrites the same email 15 times. This is the sneaky kind, where someone spends months preparing to start instead of actually starting. B.J. Fogg's research on habit formation shows that fear of imperfection creates the biggest barrier to building new behaviors. When people set standards that are too high for their initial attempts, they create resistance that prevents them from starting. The brain interprets starting something as a threat to self-image because it means facing the reality that you might not be good at it immediately. Your brain protects you from this potential disappointment by convincing you that you're not ready yet, that you need to prepare more, that you should wait until conditions are perfect. This shows up everywhere in habit formation. People spend months researching the perfect workout routine instead of just starting to exercise. They spend weeks planning the perfect morning routine instead of just waking up 10 minutes earlier. They spend months learning about meditation techniques instead of just sitting quietly for 2 minutes. The research becomes a way to avoid the discomfort of being bad at something initially. Social media amplifies this tendency by showing you everyone else's highlight reel while you're comparing it to your behind-the-scenes reality. You scroll through Instagram and see other people posting about their perfect morning routines, their beautiful home offices, and their confident posts about their achievements. You never see the failures, the messy first attempts, or the months of struggling that came before those perfect posts. This constant comparison makes you feel like you need to have everything figured out before you can even begin. The curated nature of online content creates unrealistic expectations about what starting something should look like. You think you need to have a perfect plan, perfect equipment, and perfect conditions before you can call yourself someone who exercises regularly, or meditates, or eats healthy. You don't realize that most successful habit builders started with imperfect first versions that got better over time. This fear of imperfection is actually a form of self-sabotage because it prevents you from getting the experience you need to actually become good at something. You can spend 3 months learning about productivity theory, but you won't spend any time actually practicing productivity skills. You can tell people everything about the benefits of meditation, but you've never actually sat still for 5 minutes without getting distracted. The perfectionism keeps you from the very experiences that would help you improve. Analysis paralysis becomes a comfortable place to hide because it feels productive while actually being a sophisticated form of procrastination. Every time you sit down to take a real action, like starting a workout or beginning a meditation practice, your brain suggests something else you should learn first. Maybe you should take a course on proper form. Maybe you should read more books about mindfulness. Maybe you should wait until you have everything figured out perfectly before you start. Perfectionism gets worse with accumulated knowledge because the more you know about something, the more you realize how much you don't know, which makes starting feel even more daunting. If you've read 5 books about fitness, you know exactly how sophisticated workout programs can be. This knowledge makes you feel like you can't start exercising until you can create routines at that expert level. The expertise becomes a barrier instead of a foundation. The more you strive for perfection, the more likely you are to experience disappointment and self-doubt, which reinforces perfectionist tendencies. Every time you don't start something because it wasn't perfect, you reinforce the belief that things need to be perfect before they can begin. This creates a cycle where each avoided start makes the next one feel even more impossible. Fogg's tiny habits model breaks this pattern by making imperfection impossible to avoid and success inevitable. Instead of trying to meditate for 20 minutes perfectly, you start with taking 3 deep breaths after you brush your teeth. Instead of planning the perfect workout routine, you do 2 push-ups after you make your coffee. The habits are so small that you can't fail at them, and they're so simple that perfectionism can't interfere. The tiny approach works because it gets you moving immediately and gives you the feedback you need to actually improve instead of just preparing to improve. Within 1 week of starting tiny habits, you learn more about what works for your specific situation than you would from months of research. You discover what times of day work best for you, what triggers are most reliable, and what obstacles actually show up in your real life instead of theoretical scenarios. Perfectionism often masks deeper fears like fear of judgment, failure, or inadequacy. The research marathon isn't really about being prepared. It's about avoiding the possibility of being criticized or failing. As long as you're still preparing, you don't have to face the risk of someone noticing your imperfect attempts or pointing out flaws in your approach. The perfectionism protects you from these uncomfortable possibilities. The imperfection practice that breaks perfectionist paralysis involves deliberately doing things imperfectly and documenting what you learn from each imperfect attempt. You start with intentionally low standards for your first attempts and gradually raise them based on experience rather than theory. Instead of trying to create the perfect first version, you create the minimum viable first version and improve it based on real results. But even when you overcome perfectionism and start taking imperfect action, there's still something else that determines whether you'll actually stick with new habits long enough for them to become automatic. Something that most people completely ignore when they're trying to change their behavior. And it's the reason why even management start strong and eventually burn out and quit. That factor is energy management, and it's the secret that separates high achievers from everyone else. Most people never figure this out. They think if they just organize their calendar better or find the right productivity app, they'll finally get everything done. But you can have the most perfectly organized schedule in the world, and if your energy is depleted, you'll still procrastinate on everything important. Tom figured this out when he started tracking his energy patterns instead of his time. Tom was a software developer who was constantly frustrated because he would plan out his day perfectly, block out time for his most important projects, and then sit down at his computer and feel like his brain was made of fog. He would stare at his code for 20 minutes without typing a single line, then give up and check Reddit instead. This would happen every single day around 2 p.m., right when he had scheduled his most challenging work. 1 week, Tom decided to track his energy levels every hour, instead of tracking what tasks he completed. He rated his mental clarity and focus on a simple scale throughout the day. What he discovered completely changed how he approached work. His energy wasn't consistent throughout the day. It followed predictable patterns. He had peak mental clarity from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., decent focus from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., then his energy would crash hard from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., and he'd get a second wind from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Tom realized he had been scheduling his most difficult coding work during his lowest energy window and wondering why he couldn't focus. He restructured his entire day around his energy patterns instead of arbitrary time blocks. He moved his most challenging projects to his 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. peak window, scheduled meetings and administrative tasks during his 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. low energy period, and used his 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. second wind for creative problem solving. Within 2 weeks, his productivity doubled without working any additional hours. Harvard research shows that productivity correlates directly with aligning tasks to peak energy windows, particularly in the hours following sleep when cognitive performance is naturally highest. Most people unknowingly drain their energy before they even start working. They wake up and immediately check their phones, which depletes their mental energy by forcing their brains to process dozens of inputs before they're fully awake. They skip breakfast or eat something sugary, which creates physical energy crashes later in the day. They start their day with busy work instead of meaningful projects, which drains their sense of purpose and motivation. Energy depletion is the real cause of procrastination, not lack of willpower or motivation. When your energy is high, difficult tasks feel manageable and even enjoyable. When your energy is low, the same tasks feel overwhelming and impossible. Tom noticed that on days when he was well-rested and energized, he could tackle complex coding problems for hours without getting distracted. On days when he was tired or stressed, he would procrastinate on simple tasks like answering emails. Your brain is naturally most focused during specific windows that align with your circadian rhythm. For most people, peak cognitive performance occurs during the first few hours after waking up, when cortisol levels are naturally high and your brain hasn't been depleted by decision-making throughout the day. This is why successful writers, entrepreneurs, and creators often do their most important work before checking email or social media. Tom discovered his peak focus window was from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., which aligned with his natural circadian rhythm. During this time, his brain could process complex information quickly, he made fewer mistakes, and he could maintain concentration without fighting constant distractions. He started treating this 2-hour window like sacred time and refused to schedule meetings or check messages during this period. He called it his golden hours and protected them fiercely. Aligning your most important tasks with your peak energy windows creates what feels like effortless productivity. When you work with your natural energy patterns instead of against them, difficult tasks become easier. You make better decisions, and you experience less mental fatigue. Tom found that 2 hours of focused work during his peak energy window accomplished more than 6 hours of scattered work during his low energy periods. Energy mismanagement creates a downward spiral that makes procrastination worse over time. When you try to do demanding work during low energy periods, you struggle and feel frustrated, which depletes your emotional reserves further. This creates stress, which affects your sleep quality, which reduces your physical energy the next day. Poor physical energy makes it harder to focus, which depletes your mental energy faster. This cycle continues until you feel chronically tired and unmotivated. Ultradian rhythms, which are shorter cycles of approximately 90 to 120 minutes, also play a crucial role in sustainable productivity. These cycles involve periods of alertness, followed by periods of rest, and understanding these rhythms can help you schedule work and breaks to maximize efficiency. During the active phase of an ultradian cycle, you're typically more focused and efficient, while the rest phase allows for mental recovery and prevents burnout. The energy profiling concept involves identifying your optimal work windows by observing your natural patterns of alertness and focus throughout the day. Psychology literature shows that individuals who align their most demanding cognitive tasks with their peak energy periods experience significantly less procrastination and mental fatigue. This approach moves away from traditional time management toward working with your biology instead of against it. For 1 week, Tom tracked his energy levels every hour from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. using a simple rating system. He noticed patterns emerge almost immediately. His mental energy peaked mid-morning and had a smaller peak in late afternoon. His focus was lowest right after lunch and highest in the evening when he worked on challenging projects that required creativity. The audit revealed that Tom's optimal work windows were 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for complex problem solving, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for routine coding tasks, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. for meetings and administrative work, and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. for creative projects. By aligning his tasks with these natural energy patterns, he transformed his productivity without changing his schedule or working longer hours. The key was working with his biology instead of against it. But even when you optimize your energy management and align your tasks with your natural rhythms, there's still something else that can completely sabotage your productivity efforts. Something that's working against you every single day, even when you're motivated and energized. Something that's so powerful it can override your best intentions and strongest willpower without you even realizing it's happening. The environment redesign that changes everything. Your environment shapes your choices more than you realize. Behavioral economics research shows that small changes in your surroundings can dramatically alter your behavior through what researchers call choice architecture. Most people try to change their habits by fighting their surroundings instead of changing their surroundings to support their habits. This is like trying to swim upstream when you could just turn around and swim with the current. Alex figured this out when he was struggling to get any work done from his home office. Alex had all the motivation in the world. He was starting a side business that could eventually replace his day job. He had clear goals, and he genuinely wanted to succeed. But every time he sat down at his desk to work on his business, he would end up doing something else within 10 minutes. His phone was always within arm's reach, making it effortless to check notifications. His workspace was cluttered with random items that had nothing to do with his business. Old bills, magazines, random cables, and personal items that triggered thoughts about other things he needed to do. Alex made one simple change that completely eliminated his procrastination. He put his phone in a drawer across the room so he would have to get up and walk to check it. Within 1 week of making this change, Alex's productivity transformed completely. He could sit down at his desk and immediately start working without fighting the urge to check his phone. The environmental cue that had been triggering his procrastination was gone, replaced with a setup that supported productive behavior. Environmental cues trigger automatic procrastination responses because your brain creates associations between your surroundings and your behaviors. Every time you procrastinate in a certain location, your brain strengthens the connection between that location and procrastination. After weeks or months of this conditioning, just being in that environment automatically triggers the urge to procrastinate. Your brain doesn't even think about it consciously. It just starts looking for distractions, because that's what it's been trained to do in that space. The psychology behind friction shows how you can use effort levels strategically to shape your behavior. Friction is the amount of effort required to perform any action. High friction makes behaviors harder to do, while low friction makes them easier. If you want to stop checking your phone while working, you increase the friction by putting it in another room. If you want to start exercising, you decrease the friction by laying out your workout clothes the night before. Your brain naturally chooses the path of least resistance, so you can guide your behavior by adjusting the friction levels of different activities. The specific environmental changes that make good habits inevitable involve reducing friction for positive behaviors and increasing friction for negative behaviors. For exercise, this means setting out your workout clothes, filling your water bottle, and placing your gym bag by the door. For healthy eating, this means washing and cutting vegetables when you get home from the grocery store, keeping healthy snacks visible, and storing junk food in hard-to-reach places. For productive work, this means having all your tools ready, removing distractions, and creating a dedicated workspace that's only used for important tasks. Creating activation energy for your goals means designing your environment so that starting a task requires minimal effort. If your goal is to read more books, you place a book on your pillow so you see it when you go to bed. If your goal is to drink more water, you keep a full water bottle on your desk at all times. If your goal is to practice guitar, you leave your guitar out on a stand instead of in a case. The idea is to make the first step toward your goal so easy that you can't talk yourself out of it. Most people's environments are sabotaging them because they've never consciously designed their spaces to support their goals. They have their workspace next to their bed, their phone next to their computer, junk food in their kitchen, and exercise equipment buried in their closet. These environments are perfectly designed to create procrastination and make positive habits difficult. The average person encounters dozens of environmental cues throughout the day that trigger procrastination, and they don't even realize it's happening. Your physical environment sends constant signals to your brain about what behaviors are expected and rewarded. A cluttered desk signals disorganization and overwhelm. A clean, organized workspace signals focus and professionalism. A phone on your desk signals that you should check it regularly. A book on your nightstand signals that you should read before bed. These signals operate below your conscious awareness, but they powerfully influence your behavior throughout the day. Location changes can instantly boost productivity because they disrupt established patterns and remove familiar procrastination triggers. When you work from a coffee shop, your brain doesn't have the same associations with procrastination that it has with your home office. When you study at the library, you're surrounded by other people who are focusing, which creates social pressure to do the same. When you exercise at a gym, you're in an environment specifically designed for physical activity, which makes it easier to stay motivated. The power of environmental design lies in its ability to make good choices automatic and bad choices difficult. When your environment is properly designed, you don't need to rely on constant decision-making to do the right thing. The right choice becomes the obvious choice, the easy choice, and often the only choice. This is how you create sustainable behavior change that doesn't depend on how you feel on any given day. The environment audit checklist that eliminates procrastination triggers starts with identifying every item in your workspace and asking whether it supports your goals or distracts from them. Remove anything that doesn't directly contribute to your success. Position items that support your goals in prominent locations where you'll see them regularly. Create physical barriers between yourself and your biggest distractions. Design your space so that productive activities require less effort than unproductive ones. Make your environment tell the story of who you want to become instead of who you used to be. But understanding individual strategies like dopamine management, attention restoration, and environmental design is only part of the solution. The real breakthrough happens when you combine these insights into a systematic approach that addresses the root cause of procrastination instead of just treating the symptoms. The three-step method that actually works. The three-step system that actually works addresses the root cause of procrastination instead of just treating the symptoms. Most productivity methods focus on time management or willpower techniques, but they're essentially putting band-aids on a broken leg. This system goes deeper and fixes the underlying mechanisms that create procrastination in the first place. It's based on how your brain actually changes behavior, not on wishful thinking or motivational speeches. Maria's transformation perfectly demonstrates how this system works in real life. Maria was a chronic procrastinator who had been stuck in the same marketing job for 3 years, dreaming about starting her own consulting business, but never taking action. She would spend hours researching business ideas, making lists of potential clients, and planning her perfect launch strategy. But when it came time to actually reach out to clients or create her service offerings, she would always find something else to do instead. She had been stuck in this cycle for 18 months when she finally implemented the three-step system. In 90 days, Maria went from chronic procrastinator to launching her dream business with 3 paying clients. The transformation wasn't gradual. It happened in distinct phases that aligned perfectly with the 3 steps. The first month focused on rewiring her brain's reward system. The second month aligned her tasks with her natural energy patterns. And the third month created environmental systems that made success inevitable. By day 90, she had quit her job and was running her consulting business full-time. Step 1 is the neural reset, which rewires brain's reward system to find satisfaction in productive activities instead of procrastination. Your brain currently associates difficult tasks with discomfort and easy tasks with pleasure. This creates a situation where scrolling social media feels rewarding, while working on important projects feels like punishment. The neural reset reverses this association by creating positive experiences around productive activities and removing the artificial rewards from procrastination behaviors. Maria started her neural reset by eliminating all sources of instant gratification for 7 days. No social media, no YouTube, no news websites, no video games, no mindless scrolling. This wasn't about willpower. It was about giving her brain a chance to reset its reward thresholds. When you remove artificial stimulation, your brain becomes more sensitive to natural rewards like completing tasks, solving problems, and making progress. By day 7, Maria found herself excited about working on her business instead of dreading it. The neural reset works because it forces your brain to find pleasure in activities that previously felt boring or difficult. When you remove easy dopamine sources, your brain starts looking for satisfaction in more challenging activities. Maria noticed that by day 5, she was actually enjoying research and planning instead of seeing them as chores. Her brain had recalibrated its reward system to find these activities genuinely satisfying. Step 2 is energy alignment, which matches your most important tasks to your natural energy rhythms instead of fighting against them. Most people try to force themselves to be productive during their lowest energy periods and wonder why they can't focus. Energy alignment identifies when your brain naturally wants to do deep work and schedules your most important tasks during those windows. Maria tracked her energy levels every hour for 1 week to identify her peak performance windows. She discovered that her mental clarity was highest from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. She had good focus from 10 a.m. to noon. Her energy crashed from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and she got a second wind from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. She restructured her entire schedule around these patterns, moving her most challenging business development work to her 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. peak window. The energy alignment step eliminates the constant battle between your goals and your biology. When you work with your natural rhythms instead of against them, productive work starts feeling effortless. Maria went from struggling to focus for 20 minutes to easily working for 2 hours straight during her peak energy window. She wasn't working harder, she was working smarter by aligning her tasks with her natural energy patterns. Step 3 is the environment lock, which creates systems that make success inevitable and failure nearly impossible. Your environment is constantly sending signals to your brain about what behaviors are expected. The environment lock redesigns your physical and digital spaces to automatically trigger productive behaviors, while eliminating cues that lead to procrastination. Maria transformed her workspace by removing every distraction and adding cues that triggered business-focused thinking. She moved her desk away from her bed, put her phone in a different room, cleared everything except business materials from her workspace, and added a whiteboard with her goals prominently displayed. She also created what she called activation sequences, specific arrangements of tools and materials that made starting work require minimal effort. The environment lock works because it removes the need for willpower and decision-making from your daily routine. When your environment is properly designed, the right choice becomes the obvious choice. Maria's workspace now automatically put her in business mode instead of relaxation mode. She didn't have to fight the urge to check her phone or browse social media because these options weren't easily available in her work environment. These 3 steps work together synergistically because they address different aspects of the same problem. The neural reset fixes your brain's reward system. Energy alignment optimizes your natural rhythms, and the environment lock creates external systems that support your internal changes. Each step reinforces the others, creating a compound effect that makes lasting change possible. This approach succeeds where others fail because it works with your biology instead of against it. Traditional productivity advice assumes you can override your brain's natural tendencies through willpower alone. This system recognizes that your brain's tendencies can be redirected but not ignored. By addressing the neurological, physiological, and environmental factors that create procrastination, you eliminate the root causes instead of just managing the symptoms. Early adopters of the 3-step approach report significantly higher success rates in habit maintenance compared to traditional productivity methods. The system can be customized for different personality types by adjusting the specific techniques within each step. Introverts might need longer periods of uninterrupted focus during their energy alignment, while extroverts might benefit from accountability partners as part of their environment lock. Analytical personalities might track more metrics during the neural reset, while creative types might focus more on environmental design. The 3-step framework remains the same, but the implementation details can be personalized. But knowing the system is only half the battle. The other half is understanding exactly what to expect during each phase of implementation and how to push through the inevitable obstacles that arise when you're rewiring years of ingrained patterns. Your 30-day transformation timeline breaks down exactly what happens during each phase of rewiring your brain's patterns. Most people quit after 3 days because they don't understand what's actually supposed to happen during each stage. They expect immediate results, and when they don't feel completely transformed by day 2, they assume the process isn't working. But procrastination patterns took years to develop, and your brain needs time to rewire itself. The key is knowing what to expect at each stage so you don't give up right before the breakthrough happens. Research shows that habit formation takes an average of 66 days to become automatic, with a range from 18 to 254 days depending on the complexity of the behavior and individual factors. This means your 30-day transformation is just the beginning of a longer process, but it's the most crucial phase because it establishes the foundation for lasting change. Understanding this timeline helps you set realistic expectations and avoid the disappointment that causes most people to quit. Days 0 through 7 represent the resistance phase, and it's going to feel like your brain is actively fighting against you. This isn't your imagination. Your brain literally is fighting against you because you're trying to change established neural pathways. During this phase, you'll experience what feels like physical discomfort when you try to focus on important tasks. Your brain will suggest dozens of other things you could be doing instead. You'll feel restless, anxious, and like you're forcing yourself to do something unnatural. Sarah experienced this exact pattern when she started her transformation. Day 1 felt exciting because she was motivated and optimistic. Day 2 was harder because the novelty wore off. Days 3 through 7 were brutal because her brain kept suggesting she should check social media, clean her room, or research something instead of working on her business. She described it as feeling like she was trying to meditate while someone was playing loud music in the background. Her brain was constantly offering distractions. The way to push through the resistance phase is to expect it and prepare for it instead of being surprised by it. Your brain isn't broken, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's trying to conserve energy and avoid discomfort, which is what kept your ancestors alive. The discomfort you feel during this phase is temporary and necessary. It's your brain creating new neural pathways while the old ones are still active. This creates internal conflict that feels uncomfortable, but signals that change is happening. During the first week, you need to be more strict with yourself than you'll need to be later. This means eliminating all sources of instant gratification, even the small ones that seem harmless. No social media, no YouTube, no news websites, no video games, no mindless scrolling. Your brain needs to reset its reward thresholds, and any artificial stimulation will interfere with this process. This phase requires the most willpower because your new habits haven't become automatic yet. Days 8 through 21 represent the momentum phase, where progress begins to build and you start seeing actual results. This is when the neural pathways you've been building start to strengthen and compete with your old patterns. You'll notice that focusing on important tasks feels slightly easier, and you can work for longer periods without getting distracted. The physical discomfort of the resistance phase starts to fade, replaced by a sense of accomplishment when you complete tasks. Michael noticed significant changes during his momentum phase. Week 2 was when he could finally sit down and work on his side business for 30 minutes without checking his phone. Week 3 was when he started looking forward to his focused work sessions instead of dreading them. His brain was beginning to associate productive work with positive feelings instead of discomfort. The key during this phase is to capitalize on the progress by gradually increasing the difficulty of your tasks. The momentum phase is when you need to resist the temptation to go back to your old patterns. Your brain will test you by suggesting that since you've made progress, you can afford to relax your standards. This is exactly when most people sabotage themselves. They think they can handle checking social media for just 5 minutes, or they can skip their focused work session just once. But these exceptions reset your progress and make it harder to maintain momentum. Day 22 and beyond is the integration phase, where new habits become automatic and require less conscious effort. This is when productive behavior stops feeling like work and starts feeling natural. You'll sit down to work on important tasks without having to convince yourself to do it. Your brain will automatically focus on productive activities instead of looking for distractions. The new neural pathways have become stronger than the old ones. Jessica reached the integration phase during week 4 of her transformation. She noticed that she would automatically open her business documents when she sat down at her computer, instead of automatically checking email like she used to. Her brain had rewired itself to default to productive behavior. By week 6, she was working on her business for 2 hours every morning without any internal resistance. The behavior had become as automatic as brushing her teeth. Common obstacles during each stage include emotional resistance in the first week, overconfidence in weeks 2 and 3, and complacency in week 4 and beyond. During the first week, you might feel frustrated, anxious, or depressed as your brain adjusts to the new patterns. This is normal and temporary. During weeks 2 and 3, you might think you've figured everything out and can relax your standards. This is when many people relapse. During week 4 and beyond, you might take your progress for granted and stop maintaining the systems that created the change. The compound effects of consistency become obvious around day 21, when you realize that small daily actions have created significant changes in your life. Marcus started his transformation wanting to write a book, but after 30 days of consistent writing sessions, he had completed 3 chapters and developed a daily writing habit that felt natural. The compound effect wasn't just about the pages he wrote, it was about the identity shift from someone who wanted to write to someone who was a writer. Maintaining motivation during difficult periods requires connecting your daily actions to a bigger purpose. When you're in the resistance phase and everything feels hard, you need to remember why you started this process. Write down your reasons for wanting to change and read them every morning. Connect your daily habits to the person you want to become and the life you want to live. Motivation is temporary, but purpose is permanent. Starting today, rather than tomorrow, is crucial because your brain will always find reasons to delay. Tomorrow never comes because when tomorrow becomes today, your brain will suggest waiting until the next tomorrow. The perfect time to start doesn't exist. Your circumstances will never be ideal. You'll never feel completely ready, and there will always be something else you think you should do first. The only time that matters is right now. The daily tracking system that ensures you stay on course involves rating 3 metrics every evening: focus quality, energy levels, and progress toward your main goal. Focus quality measures how well you concentrated during your important work sessions. Energy levels track whether you're managing your energy effectively throughout the day. Progress measures whether you moved closer to your main goal. Rate each metric from 1 to 10 and look for patterns over time. This system keeps you accountable and helps you identify what's working and what needs adjustment. But here's what most people don't realize about this entire process. The transformation you experience over these 30 days reveals something fundamental about the nature of procrastination itself. What this reveals is that procrastination isn't a character flaw or some personal weakness you were born with. It's a solvable problem that happens when your brain gets rewired by modern life. You've seen exactly how this works: the dopamine damage from social media, the attention span crisis, the resistance your brain creates when facing challenging tasks. But you've also seen the solution. The research shows that habits take longer than 21 days to form, with an average of 66 days for most behaviors. The key is focusing on small, incremental changes rather than dramatic transformations. Redesigning your environment and aligning tasks with your energy patterns creates the foundation for lasting change. Right now, you have a choice. You can keep doing what you've always done and stay exactly where you are, or you can pick one small habit and start building it today while you're still motivated.